All right, thank you so much. Welcome back to the third episode of the Crossing the Zone of Fear podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. Of course, I'm the co founder of the Institute for Excellence in Sales and the host and the producer of the Sales Game Changers podcast. This is a special series. John Knotts and John is the author of a great book called Crossing the Zone of Fear. And what we're doing is we're going through his book in 7 episodes and we're going chronologically through the book. We've already gone through the first, 23 pages. And now we're going in the chapter, John, where you talk about the comfort zone. So once again, people, this podcast is available on YouTube. And it's also a special episode of the Sales Game Changers podcast, which is my podcast where we've done over 700 shows at this point. Again, we're doing this series in the summer of 2024. We're actually recording this show on August 15th of 2024. And John Knotts, it's great to see you again. And as I've been telling people, I've applied a lot of what you talk about in the book. And it's the kind of the concept of, when you want to buy a red car, all you see is red cars. And there's other aspects of our life are appearing that way as well. But one of the great things about going through your book is that the things that I thought I was afraid of have arisen. And a matter of fact, I'm very happy to say I've already addressed one of them in the first week that we did this podcast. And it was one that was just bugging me, and it was there, and it was an easy one. It was a low hanging fruit, as they say, and I took care of it. It may come up again, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But I know I addressed it and I've handled it, and it's in the rear view mirror. It's not something that's with me, but as I'm going through this book with you, John Knotts, I'm thinking like, okay, well, how come I didn't make any phone calls today? Again, I run the Institute for Excellence in Sales, and we tell people all day long, you need to make calls to grow your business. Well, today I didn't make any phone calls. So where's the fear? What's there? So John, it's great to see you. Congratulations again on this book. And like I said, as I go through it, and I've had the fortune to talk to you in depth about it over the last 2 weeks. It's been a life-changing experience. And I know that there have been people who've been watching. Thank you all. And some friends of yours have reached out to me. Again, we post the information on LinkedIn on Sunday mornings as well. So good to see you. Before we start talking about the concept of the comfort zone, how are you doing as you're going through this process with me?
Oh, I'm doing good. It's this is my favorite part of the book. So, because I think it's kind of a revolutionary look at the zone of fear and what it does to you.
So it's interesting. So again, as I was reading the book, I kind of view this chapter again. We're up right now to the zone of fear. We're talking about comfort zones and those kind of things. So it kind of like seemed to me a little bit. And today's show is going to be shorter than the first two that we've done. We'll see where we go in the future ones. But yeah, it's a good concept that you present here. And basically, you present the concept that people have historically been looking at an equal space between the comfort zone, the fear zone, the learning zone, and then the growth zone. And you published in the book, a graphic that shows it in almost like equidistant space, as if it's you get past this, you get into this, you then move to this, you then move to this, and voila, all your fears are gone. But your premise is that that's not the way it is. So take us through that, and that'll get us prompted up for prompted, I should say, for the rest of the book.
So the graphic that typically we see are 4 concentric circles. It's a Venn diagram. The circles are all within each other. So it starts with the zone of comfort in the very bottom center, and then it moves out, zone of fear, zone of learning, zone of growth. When I look at this, it is not what really is going on, because honestly, the zone of fear is the place that we spend and have the most difficulty with. When we leave our comfort zone and go into the zone of fear, we spend a lot of time in fear. Even when we're maybe in the zone of learning, we're still sometimes dealing with, say, the zone of fear. So let's say you go to a college course and you're taking that college course where you're learning, right? And just the step of like going to college might be like, I'm overcoming fear. But then as you're learning this, you might be constantly hit with, well, am I going to pass this exam? Am I going to be able to learn this? Am I going to have time? Like all these things keep hitting you. But that zone of learning is really small because it's usually we get past our fear, and then we do something and we learn. Now, the question is whether or not we apply it. And that's the biggest thing about learning, and a lot of problems with self-help books and professional development books, is that people read them all the time, but they don't actually apply them in any kind of systematic way. They might come back and it's management flavor of the week or whatever, like, oh, let's try this week. And then they're jumping to the next thing. But truly, there's no systematic application. So, what does this whole thing cause? It's all based on comfort zone. We exist right now. We are operating in our comfort zone, maybe feeling a little bit of fear because, we're talking on the, this is going to get published. People are going to see it. They might not like it. Oh, like, so these ideas go through our head all the time. Even before I get on every one of these so far, I've had a little bit of feeling in my gut, and I recognize the feeling. I know the emotion, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get over it. It is what it is. But what happens is when you try to leave your comfort zone to do something new, you've never done it before, it might be scary, and you're worried, you have to cross this barrier called the terror barrier. When you break through that, you're still dealing with these fears, and it can be a journey of fear that you're going through. At any point, you are kicked back, like you quit and say, "Nah, I can't do this. I just, I'm not going to take that exam because I know I'm going to fail. So I'm just going to fail this course." You now go back to your comfort zone and you're like, that felt better. But what happened is your comfort zone shrinks. Every time that you don't do something because you're afraid, you hit the terror barrier, you're afraid, you turn back, then that comfort zone shrinks more and more. And this is why some people can't leave their house. Some people can't leave their bed. It's because they're constantly assaulted by their fears. And it's playing on their mind, and their comfort zone is shrinking to the point where it's the edges of their bed or the door to their house. In the obverse of this, if you go and you learn and you apply, which moves you into the zone of growth, the whole concept of growth is that something's going to grow. What is it that grows? Is your comfort zone. And the more you push yourself through the zone of fear into learning and then apply what you learn, the more your comfort zone grows. And you find, and this is where, some people are like, oh, I don't have any fear. I'm not afraid of that. In reality, what it is their comfort zone has just become so big that they can operate very freely,
Yeah.
because it's like, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that. I've been on podcasts before. You've run podcasts. So, yeah, a little tinge of it. It's excitement, but you've done this 100,000 times. So, like, all right, I'm good. It's not a problem. And that's what we live in, this comfort zone. And it's just, how big do you want it to be? You want to live on your bed, or do you want it to be a mansion that
Mm.
you can go to all these different rooms in and explore and be comfortable with your life? And that's really what this concept of crossing the zone of fear, because if you can't get across, if I can't help pull you across that zone of fear, you'll snap back and your zone of comfort is going to shrink. And I don't want that. What I want is for you to constantly expand that comfort zone.
Ah, okay, that's a great distinction. So the point isn't, people say, quote unquote, get out of your comfort zone,
Mhm.
right? Your point isn't, we want you to live in the space of the fear zone. It's, we
Mhm.
want you to go through the fear zone. You have to probably, even the people who are at
Right.
the highest level, because there's still something. It may not be a terrible where you're sweating. It might just be something you're just not willing to address. Like, for example, when I was talking in the example before at the Institute for Excellence in Sales, one of the basic things is that you need to engage the customer, right?
Mhm.
So you need to engage. If you're going to be successful in sales, you need to engage. That means maybe you need to pick up the phone. You need to, you know, uh, schedule a meeting. There's a whole slew of things that you need to do,
Go to a
and
networking event.
go to networking events. Just get out of your house with those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So your premise isn't. I mean, so for example, I may be nice and calm all day and not make any phone calls. But there's still the fear that we're probably going to talk about this later on in the book, I guess, that I'm kind of just not acknowledging as compared to sitting by my desk, biting my nails, trembling, sweating because I'm afraid to pick up the phone. I could just avoid it, and there's still a fear there.
Right.
It's not representing itself. And the whole premise here is, okay, that's still a fear, so how do we acknowledge it, go through the fear zone, then go through the learning zone, then growth zone, and then our comfort zone gets larger? Is that basically kind of the basic
Yes,
premise?
and the thing is, what you're pointing out here is that fear doesn't go away. You've
Yes.
been doing this for a long time. You know what to do, you know why you need to do it, yet there's still that tinge. And it's like, I can find something else to do. I'm busy. We justify, but we don't realize that there's that threshold still that exists there, that terror barrier.
Yes.
Your zone of fear in making those phone calls is not nearly the zone of fear of doing something that you've never done before
Right.
that might provide a lot of risk, but it's still there. So, just like I
Yes.
said, every time I get on this call, this is our third one, I feel a little bit in my gut like, okay, got to get myself situated here, get the excitement going, turn those butterflies into a formation because I know it's going to be fine. I, everything that I might, and I'm not really worried about anything. It's just my body is saying, "Ooh, like you haven't done one of these in a week, so this is new."
Yeah, so to use this premise back to sales, so uh there's probably very successful people who are listening. But so for example, if you make your quota in sales, good, you are successful. Your company is going to pay you a good amount of money to do that. But you can go to the next level and the next level. Now, what's stopping you? There is a fear there, right? To get to the
Yes.
next level. Maybe we talked in the beginning about the fear of success or the fear of failure, other of the professional fears, as you said. It's interesting. Like, we're talking here about the podcast. I've done over 800 podcasts, 800 sales game changers, Love, Hope, Lime, Sales Story, and a Tip. And now, of course, we're doing Crossing the Zone of Fear. I have zero point 0 problem hitting the button, getting in front of the mic, talking to somebody. But how come I haven't interviewed Mark Cuban yet? Right. So it's kind of like, where's the,
How
what's
come Mark
where?
Cuban hasn't come on? It's what, but
So,
and I'll just
yeah.
point out a little thing. Right beforehand, you were like, you're like, you did the same thing I did. You got yourself centered. You put yourself in the zone. I live in this zone of comfort. I'm not afraid. I'm like, okay. And that we're going to talk about this. That's what the section 7 is all about. What do you do? How do you overcome these things? That was an instance of where you're comfortable because you've done well over 800 podcasts. So when you're sitting there, you're like, yeah, I've done this. This is cool.
Yeah,
Boom.
but you know
Let's
what
get
though?
more.
But once again, I do a podcast. I'm a podcaster. I've done more podcasts than 99.9% of the world. I was doing an analysis of what I like to do. I enjoy, so I'm in the comfort zone this, but there's Joe Rogan, right? So, there seems to be people who are making a lot of money doing podcasts. I'm using the podcast to get some content to meet prospects, but okay, I there's things that I am fearful of doing, even though I'm comfortable in front of the mic, right?
Mhm.
there's other parts to it. It's like, okay, good. It's like people might be thinking, oh my God, you're killing it. You're nailing this thing. I remember I was listening to someone who's very successful with a entertainment podcast, and one of the most successful storytelling podcasts. And she used to joke, my podcast is the number one podcast. I've made hundreds, doing the podcast. So the point being is that, okay, I'm comfortable in front of the mic. I'm comfortable posting it. I'm comfortable with the process. Okay, well, how do I take it to the next level? Right. And then to the next level so that I can be making hundreds of thousands or millions with the podcast. Is that possible? I don't know. But there's a fear
It
there
clearly is
that's
possible because somebody's doing it.
because other people are doing
If
it.
if
And
other people are doing it, then you can do it too. And it's just you have to overcome. Sometimes
yes.
it's just that you got to do the right things, and we don't know what the right things are. But sometimes it's a mental block that
Yeah.
says, "My podcast might not be good enough.
Well, I mean, yeah,
I
I mean,
might not be at the
there's bad
right level."
yeah, there's bad decisions that people might be making, but all right. So I want to keep this one short because there's a lot of stuff coming up at the end of the book. Again, comfort zone. I like the process there that again, crossing the zone of fear. So you got to go through it. Um, Anything else you want to say just to kind of wrap up this
Yeah,
section before we move on to the next section?
that's the big thing. You want to talk about the three questions in the back?
All right. So
Yeah.
again, John also throughout the book he has questions. So the question here on page 37: what did you know about the zones of comfort, fear, learning, and growth before reading this chapter? And I wrote, many people spend all their life in the comfort zone, but in sales, you need to get out of it or you will stall and eventually die or your career will end. And especially now, again, we're doing the interview in the summer of 2024 with AI and the fact that everybody I talk to sales leaders all day long. Everyone is talking about how things have changed since the last 4 years of the pandemic and so many different factors that we don't need to go into. You need, as sales professionals, to be better than ever. And if you're in the comfort zone where you were in 2019 and prior, you're going to fail. Question number
Yeah.
two: have your thoughts on these four zones changed? And if so, it's getting clear. I wrote, it's getting clearer that to grow, you need to get through the zone of fear.
And what's growing is your zone of comfort.
Right. I like that. And how would you, and also, you could be extremely happy and successful in a big comfort zone, right? A lot of
Yes,
times we say you got to get out to get to the fear, but you know, you can have a great life and you can have great family in
absolutely.
a beautiful comfort zone. And that
Right.
doesn't mean you're sitting on your bed all day long, doing
No.
things. All right. And finally, how would you describe your comfort zone based on this chapter? Okay. There's a couple things. I work from home. There's, I don't love working from home. I love going to, we had a big
You had an
event
event
this
this morning, didn't
we
you?
had a big event this morning. We had
Yeah.
a couple hundred people participating. It was at a client's location that was buzzing with activity. I was talking to people. People were coming up with ideas. We had like 4 or 5 meetings teed up after the event. That's where possibility happens. Being outside, even and driving. It's a sunny day here today. Again, I'm in Northern Virginia. John's in Texas. I also realize that being in the comfort zone, I need to revisit my goals. You can keep moving on day to day. But I said, you know what? As we're talking about this, John, and as I was just alluding to, I would like to have a bigger comfort zone. And that's one of the
Mhm.
things we're talking about on the Crossing the Zone of Fear podcast is that this is all about when you start addressing these fears, you start living,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
possibility of living life. All right. I wrote there. I said making excuses. Excuses have arisen for me. Like I said before, why didn't I make phone calls today? Well, I had an event and I was tired. Okay, well, you still said you need to make at least 5 to 10 phone calls a day. And today was a good day. Don't get me wrong. We met with prospects, we got proposals brewing, we heard back very positively from one, but why didn't I make the 10 phone calls that I tell people you need to make every day? And basically, like I just said, not doing the necessary actions to achieve goals. And I think one of the exciting things about reading your book and going through this process of crossing the zone of fear with John Knotts is that the possibility. One of my favorite words, John, is possibility, right? And when you're stuck in that zone of fear, when you're stuck in it, possibility
Mhm.
shrinks,
And
right?
so right there, that concept of being stuck in the zone of fear. Now think about like post-traumatic stress with a military member, a veteran. Where is that coming from? Because they're living in their zone of fear month over month. They can't leave it. They can't get into a comfort zone because everything is dangerous. In a war
Yeah.
zone,
Yeah.
everything you do, going to the bathroom is putting your life in danger.
Yeah.
So when you exist in the zone of fear, you're a child that lives in a
Yes.
home where you're being constantly
Yes.
attacked or tormented or something like that. You're kidnapped and you're being
Yes.
held captive. These
Yes.
kind of situations, these are the ones that really create because people can't get out of that zone of fear.
Yeah,
They
someone posted today on LinkedIn that he's been spending a lot of time with a very successful billionaire, and he said the billionaire only talks about opportunities. He doesn't like to talk about problems. And I was thinking about that, and I said, you know what? When he posted that, I said opportunities are in the future, present in the future. Problems are really in the past. A lot of what we're fearful of, and God bless our servicemen who have PTSD, but you're stuck in the past,
Yeah.
right? And even the fear that I talked to you about that I uncovered as we were going through episode one, I know where it was rooted and I knew where it came from. And when I recognized that, what it was, and it was a past event that was holding me back, I just said, this is ridiculous, and just kind of took care of it,
When you get
addressed
to
it.
chapter 7, you're gonna be like, "Yeah, I know exactly what I've been doing."
I,
But this is, I mean, this is where we're going, is how do you now understanding all of these things, what can you do about it?
what can
And
you
as
do
we
about
get
it?
through that, that's what we're working on.
Once again, this is the Crossing the Zone of Fear. It was episode 3. My name is Fred Diamond, and John Knotts is the author of the book. We look forward to seeing you all on episode 4.